Hey there, what is up, wellness people? Today, I'd like to talk about something that I'm getting a lot of people asking me about, and that is how to eat out or go to potlucks or even have a social life when there's food involved when you are plant-based or vegan. And it's not always easy. Now, luckily, we live in a time where most restaurants are starting to accommodate to plant-based diets. Most of the time, if you ask them for no dairy or vegan or whatever your dietary restrictions are, a lot of restaurants are going to understand and also comply with what your restrictions are. But there's also going to be those variable times, like if you have to go to a conference and they're feeding you and they might not have food available, or let's say you're going to a potluck and you know that it's a barbecue and everyone's going to be eating tons of burgers and steaks or whatever. How do you navigate this when you are plant-based? And that is an age-old question that I have been trying to answer for so long, and I think I have some good responses for you. So first and foremost, I just want to say that there's no cookie cutter way to go about this, but the first thing is we have to learn how to be communicative. And so if you know that you're going to an event and it's a barbecue and you know everyone there is going to be eating meat, talk to the host or talk to someone that you're going with and ask, do you know if there's any other vegetarians? Can I link up with them? Can we maybe plan a meal together? You know, things like that can be really, really helpful. But without further ado, I'm going to give you a few suggestions of the ways that I have found have really worked for me so that I can still have fun and have a social life and go to all of these events while eating plant-based. And that's also while dealing with people thinking I'm a picky eater or whatever. So here we go. So the first point I want to make is that if you know you're going to an event, whether that's a conference, a potluck, a birthday, a restaurant, whatever it is, and you know that you're going to have a hard time eating, then eat before you go. That has been such a lifesaver for me in the past because no one wants to be hangry and have a whole menu of food you can't eat in front of them. That's torture. So the first thing I would say is make sure that you are well fed before you go out to this event. That's going to just make sure that your blood sugar is going to stay stable, that you're satiated, and so that you can make a choice based on what you actually want to eat and you don't end up giving in and eating something that doesn't align with your values. So let's say that they have mashed potatoes at this restaurant or event and there's a ton of butter in it, but you don't want to be eating dairy and you're super, super hungry. You might just say, screw it and eat that mashed potato with the butter. But if you know that you're going to have a negative reaction and get really inflamed and feel awful after, then why would you want to do that? So tip number one, eat before you go out. Keep yourself satiated so that when you are in one of these situations, then you're going to be way more well equipped. The second point I want to make is to bring snacks everywhere you go. So especially during the summertime when there's lots of park hangout sessions and barbecues and all of these things, you're going to have some snacks in your purse or in your bag at all times. Things like granola bars or protein bars, or even having like a pre-made smoothie, having some nuts, an apple or fruit or whatever it is that makes you feel good that you can snack on so that you're not feeling like you're missing out. That's going to be something that will save you, and that goes for all seasons. I made a post about this during the winter time as well, and it's the same thing when you're going to holiday events. Feel free to bring snacks, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to be ashamed of to say, you know what, I'm good. I think I'm just going to stick with what I have right now and then find myself a proper meal later. Now, for potlucks specifically, this one is tricky for a lot of people because a lot of times it can feel really overwhelming, or you go to a potluck and you're looking at all of these dishes and you have no idea what's in them because you didn't make them. So potlucks are a pretty special occasion. The first thing I would recommend with potlucks is to bring a big batch of your flavor of the week, whatever that is. I have a friend who reminds me of the story about the first time we ever really hung out. She invited me to her house. They were having a potluck, and pretty much everyone had brought chips and some sort of hummus or dip that they found. And of course I showed up. This is prior to becoming a nutritionist, by the way. I showed up with a big batch of quinoa salad and it was a hit. It was amazing. Like, most people were not expecting that and they were grabbing something quick and convenient, but to have a fresh, nice meal available can be really inspiring for people, especially if they're not plant-based and have no intention of being plant-based. That's okay, because you're introducing people to something that could blow their mind and change their perspective from thinking that only things that are processed or high in sugar or have meat in them are tasty, to thinking that, wow, maybe these plant-based people are onto something. Another thing that I do with potlucks is, especially when people ask me about my recipes afterwards, I'll always just send them. So if there's a Facebook event page, I will add whatever recipe it is into that page, or I'll send it to the person that asks, and it sort of sparks intrigue for people. And it can be like a little bookmark they have in their mind, so that the next time they go to a potluck or an event, they're going to be more mindful that, oh yeah, there was somebody there who couldn't eat the food that I brought. Maybe I'll try a different recipe instead. So you can be inspiration for people around you. The fourth point that I want to make a note of is mentioning your dietary restrictions ahead of time. So this goes for potlucks, conferences, events, and restaurants, everything. So let's say that you are going to a friend's birthday and they decided to do it at the keg or something like that, and you're like, oh no. You can always check out the menu ahead of time and see what they have on the menu. You can call ahead of time and let them know that you're coming. A lot of restaurants are super happy when you do that, and they're going to be more than happy to accommodate you, especially if you give them some notice. But if it's a spontaneous thing, let's say that you just showed up at a restaurant and it happens to be a restaurant that serves a ton of meat and dairy-based products, and you don't want to indulge in that, then what you might do is take your snack out of your bag, have a little snack, keep yourself satiated. Maybe you talk to the kitchen and really ask questions. I know a lot of people, and I get a lot of people telling me they're embarrassed to ask for what they need from restaurants. They feel like they don't want to disturb the kitchen, or they don't want to be an inconvenience. But when you flip the script and you look at it from the perspective of you being a paying customer, then that's actually what this is. It's a transaction. And so if you go to a restaurant and you're going to be paying for the food there, then don't be afraid to ask for what it is that you want. Don't be afraid to ask them to remove whatever it is that you're not trying to eat. Now, when it comes to potlucks, potlucks are a special case because everyone's bringing something different. You can't ask every person to bring something plant-based unless you're the one hosting, in which case, power to you. But what you can do is also reach out ahead of time. So if there is a Facebook event page for, summertime potluck or barbecue, you can go in there and make a post. Hey guys, I have some dietary restrictions. These are them. Is anybody else going to be making food to do with this? Or would anyone else be open to making a meal that has no dairy or no beef or something like that in there? And a lot of people are really receptive. And what I have noticed in my experience, and what I hear a lot of my clients and my friends saying, is that people who are not plant-based don't really know what to cook. And that's totally acceptable. So what you could do at that point is offer them some suggestions of things they could make. Most people are more than happy to just follow a recipe and make something that is a hit. So my biggest recommendation for potlucks is today, and this is an action step that you can take right now, is get a Pinterest board. Get a Pinterest account. If you don't have one, create a board and add 5 to 10 or even 20 recipes that are go-to potluck tapa style recipes that are going to be simple and easy. And that way, when you are going to one of these events and somebody asks like, oh, I don't know how to make anything vegan, can you give me a recommendation? All you need to do is send them to your Pinterest board and they can choose one that looks appropriate. You never know. You might even inspire them to find another recipe outside of your recommendations. So again, it comes down to not being afraid to ask, because most people are really receptive to understanding and feeling empathetic to you and your dietary restrictions. A lot of people want to eat more plant-based foods, but they simply don't know how. So this is your opportunity to be a resource for other people. And then finally, I will share a little experience I had once. I went to a conference and I paid $200 to go to this 8-hour-long conference. And, you ticked off the box because I think they fed you lunch and dinner. And I said I'm plant-based and gluten-free at the time. And it was really pitiful. I mean, for the amount of money that I paid to go there, I was expecting a proper meal, and seeing how everyone else was being fed, I was really disappointed to see I had like an iceberg lettuce salad with a couple tomatoes on it and a ranch dressing, which was not vegan, by the way. There was a bunch of dairy in it. So they offered me oil and vinegar, and it was kind of disappointing. Like, I was really upset that, they'd even had the option to offer me a meal, but they had run out and they didn't have enough food. So in that type of situation, you can't always control it. But at that time, I encourage you to be prepared, right? So again, you can go back to bringing your own snack, or you can even just say, you know what, I'm going to actually pack my own lunch. I'm going to pack my own meal and, just throw my hands up and say at this time it's a loss, because with those types of situations and conferences, you don't always have control and you can't always ask the kitchen. So a few action steps that you can start taking now to make eating out less intimidating. So the first thing is to stand behind your values. If your values are not eating dairy because you know that it makes you inflamed or bloated, or maybe you're an ethical vegan, if your values mean not eating meat because you know that it doesn't make you feel good, or whatever your reasons are, stand behind that at all times and don't waver. I know it can be really tricky, especially when you have people around you saying that you're picky, or, oh, you know, there's Amy and her picky restrictions or whatever. Just stand behind that. And that in itself is integral. It's going to really inspire people because they're going to see that you're serious and you're not going to waver just because it's inconvenient. The second action step would be to curate 10 to 20 go-to recipes. And I know that sounds a little scary, but it really doesn't have to be. If you already have some go-to recipes in your back pocket or in your recipe book or whatever, start to put those together so that when somebody says, I have no idea how to cook vegan food, you can refer them to whatever it is you want to refer them to. And it can be something as simple as roasted veggies, or you can give them like a mashed potato with truffle oil recipe. There's so many great simple ways that we can adjust the typical foods people like to eat and make them more accommodating for everybody's dietary preferences. And then finally, my last action step is to be the change. If you want to see a world where people are living more compassionately, if you want to see a world where people are less judgmental, or where people can be more inclusive of everyone's dietary restrictions and preferences, then you have to be the change. And if that means standing behind your values and saying, no thanks, I'm not going to have the mashed potatoes with butter in them because that doesn't really work for me. But instead, here, why don't you try my, and I'm going to use the example again, quinoa salad, whatever it is, that is the change that you want to see in the world. So stand behind that and be that change. So that's it. Those are my tips for today. I'm going to run through one more time just in case you missed the very beginning of them. The first one is to eat before going out, especially if you know that you're going somewhere that won't have food that accommodates you. The second is to bring your own snacks. So it's okay to have snacks in your back pocket. Seriously, grab some trail mix or nuts or granola bars, throw them in all your bags. So no matter where you go, you have one in the car, you have one here and there. The third part is to introduce people. So don't be afraid to introduce people to new recipes, and also share recipes. And if people are getting stuck and they want to accommodate you in your plant-based diet, show them how. And then finally, mention your restrictions ahead of time. So if you know you're going to an event, potluck, conference, whatever it is, mention it ahead of time, call ahead of time, and make those arrangements for yourself so that you're not stuck in an awkward situation. Anyways, you guys, I am so happy that you showed up for this call. Thanks, guys. I see a few of you guys in there. And yeah, I know that last week I said I was going to talk about IBS on a plant-based diet, but I had a lot of people talking about how tricky it is to eat out on a plant-based diet. So I figured this was a really good time. Next week for Wellness Wednesday, it's looking like the topics are between two right now. So I'm going to put the vote out. If you guys have a preference, I will stick with that. It's either going to be how to successfully quit cheese, because that seems to be the hardest for most plant-based people. And the other topic would be how to live with people who are non-vegan, which can be, or, you know, not even vegan, vegetarian, plant-based, whatever you identify by. It can be tricky when you live with people who don't abide by those values. So let me know what you think. If you have a preference for a topic, if there's something you want to know about in the realm of plant-based living, let me know. And I'm so happy to do a little Wellness Wednesday for you. And I will catch you guys on the flip side. See you.